Sydney. I'm glad we brought the sunshine for you. We've got 2 days of very intensive discussion by leaders in the sector. We have a packed program, and we're going to try and keep as close to time as we possibly can, even though we're 10 minutes late now. Now, first up, I'd like to wish to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We would also like to pay our respects to all Gadigal elders, past, present and future, as well as acknowledge the youth of today who will one day be our leaders of tomorrow. And we have many leaders of today and tomorrow in the audience. We have 550 people attending today, so I apologise if you're finding a bit squeezy. We do insist that we do have tables, so we don't have theatre-style chairs, so we're jammed in, so everybody's got a table that they can rest upon. If I could just, I'm going to move quickly along because we are running a bit behind already. I'd like to, first of all, most people know us because we're a media group and we send out a massive number of EDMs into your inboxes. You must dread waking up every morning to see what we're going to be trying to push down your throat today. But we are a media group, and I have a team of journalists and others in the DCM Group who are in the far table. I'm often asked, who are they, what do they look like? So if everybody in the far table, the DCM table, if you could stand up, that's them over there, and they will be available for you to go and talk to if you want to meet Lauren, Caroline, Ian in particular as our journalists. We have a sponsors book, a book here. To my understanding, we're the only conference that keeps putting these things out, but I found them invaluable for taking notes and what have you. And we also feature in there all of our sponsors. Now, everybody's aware we could not run an event of this standard without sponsors, but we as the DCM Group, we place high value on the suppliers to the sector because we talk to them every week, because when we want to find out what you're doing. Many people don't, many C-suite leaders don't appreciate the wisdom that is in the suppliers of your sector. If you take a step back, the people who can afford, and I say afford to be sponsors here, do so because they have a lot of clients and they are successful with them. And every one of those sponsors, when we call them, they can tell us who's doing things well, who are doing things averagely, and who are doing things badly. So I do not understand why they are not called in more often to seek the wisdom of what they know and what they see. So in the front of this book, we have the contacts, the name, the email number and the phone number of all of our sponsors. And I encourage you now or at a later time to follow up those people because they're successful, they do what they do well, and they bring massive wisdom. I would also like to point out that we have extended coffee breaks. So our coffee breaks are 45 minutes, so that does give you time to meet other people. And we have an extended luncheon, and the luncheon goes for an hour. And it is a sit-down lunch for those of you who haven't been to a Leader Summit before. So it's in the restaurants downstairs. And I do ask for you, when you do go downstairs, go to your seat or find your seat. Your first course is going to be delivered on a plate. It is not buffet style for the first course. It's the only way we can get people in, sit them down. So you have your first piece of food on the plate, and then you can go to the buffet and add to that, rather than straight going to the buffet. It'll save a lot of time. Questions. We don't have a QR code and we don't have an SMS number and so on. If you have a question, we're going to have roving microphones, and we ask you to have your question ready and be prepared to ask them. And we do allow 5 minutes at the end for questions. We keep it tight because we've got 20-odd speakers, 30-odd speakers. I'd also like you to meet the people at the table. So most of us would know 2 or 3 people here, but I'm going to ask you just for the next minute and a half, can you introduce yourself to the other people at the table now so that you've got that done and you know who you're going to be speaking with. So, say hello. Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to give a presentation, as I do each year, on the landscape for the retirement living and aged care sector. And people ask me, what gives you the right to do such things? So I'd just like to point out that as a media group, we have every organisation should have their why. And the why for the DCM Group is that if people are better informed, they make better decisions, and then we get better outcomes. So our role is to constantly be going out to the sector, finding information and then feeding it back to all the people in this room and to have you thinking. And if you're better informed, you will make better decisions and you'll get better outcomes for your business. And if your business does well, then your residents will also do well because you will have profits, margins to be able to invest in better services and what have you. And being a media group, just to give you an insight into how we do it, every morning from 8:30 to 9 o'clock, the journalists and myself and James Wiltshire, we spend 30 minutes every morning discussing what's going on in the sector. You know, who's doing what, why they're doing it, and also who we've spoken to in the last 24, 48 hours. So on average, we speak to 10 CEOs a week and 20 C-suite executives a week across the country about what they're doing. So if you like, we do have the rare opportunity of having a real insight into what is going on in the sector. And that's what we base what we do on Saturday, what we do with the newsletters, and our opinion pieces that we put out. And if you'll excuse the fact that at times we like to throw out a hand grenade, we've got to keep you awake. But the objective of our media is that we do keep you informed. So that's our purpose. And hopefully with my presentation today, I'm going to have you thinking. So with all that, as I said, we're now 10 minutes behind. Let's see what I have to say. So the title of this conference is Optimism. And we put this title together mid last year, and we said it's going to be the dawn of a silver decade. Optimism is because all aged care homes are approaching full, which means that they're moving from being marginal to being, actually making a buck. And in retirement living, nearly all retirement villages are full and they're seeing price escalation. So for the first time since June 2017, which was when the Four Corners program occurred, both sectors, and we've had COVID, both sectors, the CEOs and the C-suite, are feeling optimism. And everybody had a decent Christmas, didn't we, for the first time, without floods, bushfire, COVID, etc. Hopefully you had a good Christmas. So there is optimism, but we say it's the dawning of a silver decade. It's not a golden decade, it's a silver decade because we have some major challenges in front of us. And that's what we're going to discuss today from an optimistic point of view. So first up, Plan B. 2 years ago, almost to the day, Grant Corduroy and I introduced the concept of Plan B. Plan B because Plan A, which was doing nothing, was not working for the aged care sector. We were getting nowhere, everybody was losing money, and there was no sunshine on the horizon. And we said, Grant, through his numbers, the only way that the sector can get ahead is if we can get co-contribution occurring for people paying, who have the funds to pay for what they normally pay for at home. So 2 years later, we created this logo and the slogan, Plan B, and we want $3 billion by 2023. That was 12 months away. Everybody told us we were optimistic. We were 365 days late because you would have seen from the task force announcement last week and from the Stuart Brown figures that the task force recommendations, if they are taken up, will deliver $3.6 billion. So it was 600 million over. That works out at $2.6 billion for residential aged care and $1 billion for home care. That was great to see. Importantly, the analysis that Grant and his team has done is saying it could mean $25 to $35 per day per bed for residential aged care. Now, they might have been $10, $12, $15 behind, and that takes them to $10 profit per day, but it's in the black. So if the recommendations are approved, then we're back onto sound ground. Now, the person to thank for this $3.6 billion, I believe firmly sits with Grant Corduroy. Grant has worked tirelessly. Everybody in the room would be aware of Grant, but he's worked tirelessly to achieve this result. And my monitor, thank you very much. My monitor down here isn't working, guys, so I can't read this for you. But what you'll see is Grant, many of you would not be aware that he and Stuart Brown do most of this work pro bono. So in 2019, the Fin Review announced that they were the #1 accounting firm for pro bono work in the country, and I can't see the figures because it's behind me now. But if I remember correctly, Grant says in the Fin Review article that at the age of 63, so he's now 67, he gives 2.5 days of his week pro bono, and that's all supporting the aged care sector. And the firm itself, it's around 670 hours a year each partner, and I did the maths. That for each of the partners in Stuart Brown, they give 17 weeks pro bono towards the sector. So we're very, very lucky to have Grant Corduroy. And what this goes to, Grant says, I have a responsibility to do what I do because I know the numbers. Who else is going to do it? And so I like to think that he's taking responsibility and he's showing leadership. And that's going to be the theme of my presentation today. Another person who took responsibility and leadership is Mike Baird, who's going to be speaking with us today. So Mike left NAB. You can imagine what sort of salary he was on to join the CEO of Hammond Care, and you can imagine what sort of salary he was on at Hammond Care compared to the NAB. But he did it, and he's been there for 5 years, and yes, he's given notice that he is going to leave, but he's increased Hammond Care's business by revenue by 50%, and he's re-engineered the whole business for the future. I love this photograph. At the ACPA conference last year, in his speech, Mike's concluded his speech by saying, we all have a responsibility, and I like to think that the young people are going to carry on that responsibility. And he actually got a bit choked up because he showed a photograph of his 2 daughters, who he said had decided not to be accountants or lawyers or merchant bankers. Both of them have decided to become carers, and they have actually become carers in the NDIS program. And we approached him and said, can we take a photograph with you of your daughters for our Christmas cover? And he said yes. And so this is actually in his kitchen down at Freshwater just before Christmas. So, and here I also need that monitor. I'll do this the hard way. So we have a large number of, thank you very much, Ben. We have a large number of speakers today, and I just want to go through them because we've formulated the program around the speakers around the program. So first up, we have the Annika Wells, the Minister, and despite what we all say about politicians, she has done a remarkable job in a very short period of time. We do have the recommendations. The recommendations are solid. She put her name to them, and she's going to speak via video because it's a sitting day in Parliament. Then we have Mike Baird, who I've discussed. Tom Simonson is going to then speak, and I'd just like to quote again from the Minister's speech at ACPA last year. The Minister said of Tom Simonson, you are most fortunate, you have a most conscientious leader. Without disclosing confidential deliberations, I'll say you can be very satisfied with Tom's evidence-based advocacy for your interests. So Tom has done a remarkable job for the sector in the 18 months. Not only has he worked with the government, Plan B, so on, but he's also had to transition from AXA and Laser. He's running the business. He had 80 staff on each of those organisations. He brought them together, and now ACPA is operating as a really tight business, so it's just not advocacy. Grant Corduroy, who we've mentioned. Simon Miller, another person who left a high-powered job with Boston Consulting, where he was the CEO, to join Anglicare, a massive drop in salary, but again, a responsible act. Ian Yates, nobody has worked harder, longer hours. If you're not receiving an email at 1 a.m. in the morning from Ian once a week, there's something wrong, than Ian Yates. Cam Ansell from Ansell Strategic is forever putting together proactively and for no payment, discussion papers and what have you. Penelope Eden and Dion McMaster from Minter Ellison, they're going to walk us through the new Aged Care Act, and they put out almost weekly explanations for the whole sector on how the Act is working. Very generous with their times. Then we've got, moving on, Darren Gosling this afternoon, and this is perhaps the most important area for the discussion today, is where is technology going to be taking us? And Darren is going to be discussing with 5 CIOs of the sector the IT changes that we need to take place. And then finally, we've got Mark Langdon and Max Camelia, who are going to talk about the infrastructure that we require. So you can see that there's a method to our program. Day 2, we have Mark Bindon, perhaps the most successful retirement village creator, developer in the country. He sold out Oak Tree with his partner Franco to Aware Super, and he's jumping back in. So he's going to share what he believes the market is going to be. Stephen Bexey, who's the ex-CEO of Bethany, who's put his own name out there, skin in the game, and is going out to save regional not-for-profits, principally not-for-profits in residential aged care and villages. And Prue Bowden, who, to our observation, is the most advanced in developing strategies for the sector. So and in the home health area. John Collins, Richard DeHaas. Richard is going to really stun you with outside thinking. Tamar Krebs with the best dementia solution that I've seen anywhere in the world. Norrell Wild is property, so to give us an insight into property. Then we have Christopher Pine and Simon telling about Canberra, and we can appreciate that Canberra is so important. We're going to touch on that again. And the last speaker is Ross Humphreys. Now, Ross is the quiet achiever. He has, 10 years ago, created the model that we should all be looking at as being both our competitor and our saviour, so as the last session. So I urge you to stay with us until the last session. Enough of that. My presentation, right now running about 15 minutes late, but I'm going to cut it short. So, responsibility and leadership is what I'm keen to talk about. And first up, we've got the Minister. This is in November 2022. Does anybody remember the CEDA speech where she came out and said, we have 350,000 beds that we have to build in the next 15 years. It's a rising tide that we cannot sandbank again, i.e. we need a lot more beds for the baby boomers. Everybody in this room knows that. But what is happening? You can see from this chart, which is the number of beds, places per 1,000 people over the age of 70. And those old hands will remember this was the government's basis for allocating bed licences by region. So 1,000 bed one bed licence for every 1,000 people over the age of 70 in every region. What has happened to that? It's all drifted away because the bed licences have drifted away. So we've gone from an average of 85 down to 70 beds per 1,000 in 15 years. So that's a 15% shrinkage in the number of beds that we have in this country at this point in time. So we're down by 15%. Now what happened to those beds? Now obviously over 15 years low care beds have disappeared, so that accounts for a part of it. Also the home care packages have grown by 100,000, so that accounts for part of it. But what is happening to all of those people that would have gone into low care or would have gone into high care? They're still out in our system, and this is a problem. Now, we do have Senator Ruston, who is the opposition Minister for Aged Care and Sport, who was asking questions in the Senate inquiry in February 6. Now, many of you may not know Senator Ruston because she's been keeping a low profile, but just in case you don't recognise it, this is what she looks like. And she has actually been asking a lot of curly questions. And the department came back to answer that question on February 6 to say that for the 9 months to February 2024, 15 providers opened 16 aged care homes. So in 9 months, 16 aged care homes open, but 23 aged care homes closed. This is not going in the direction that's going to satisfy the baby boomers, is it? Went on to say that we created 1,633 beds, but we closed 1,113 beds. So how many did we actually open in the 9 months? And the answer is 520. And by the way, all these slides will be sent to you on Thursday. So in FY22, 860 beds, net beds open, 1,574, 524 in the 9 months. So over the last 3 years, 3,000 beds have opened. KPMG in their aged care study said that this amounts to a 0.4% cumulative growth in the number of beds we've got, but the number of people who are turning 85 is growing at 2.5%. Houston, we have a problem. What are we going to do about it? And if we look at the situation with bed occupancy, in July 23, Regis was at 93% occupancy. From our discussions across the country, including Regis, nearly every aged care operator, residential aged care operator, is in effect full. Everybody's running at 95, 96, even 98%. So the question is, where are the beds for the future people going to come from? CBRE, looking at the property side, and again I mentioned Norrell Wild tomorrow afternoon, did a study. And they said the burning question is, where will the aged population live? Worryingly, there is minimal supply forecast for the sector in the coming 3 to 5 years. The number of new build aged care homes per state can be counted on one hand. On the back of an envelope, we at DCM, because we report on all openings and so on, feel that there are about 20 aged care homes that are spade ready, i.e. if the boards say that the task force recommendations are going to be accepted, we now have confidence, the banks have said yes, let's get going. There are 20 aged care homes that could get going. The rest are going to take 5 to 7 years to get going. More worryingly, Deloitte have been doing a study of the hospital system and what is required in the hospital system. And this is the graph that they came out with. And you can see by those solid blocks that between now and 2036, virtually no new hospital beds are entering the system, and yet nearly 20,000 are going to have to be refurbished each decade. But the number that we need is around 146,000 beds by 2036. Now, if you ask yourself, how many hospital beds do you see being built in your local community? And I think you're going to say there's very little. So that Deloitte study says to achieve the number of hospital beds that we're going to require, remembering that baby boomers are approaching 80, and who are the people that are in hospital the most? Ageing people, and for the longest. They're saying we need 375 new hospital beds every month, and we're not building them. As late as yesterday, page 5 of the Australian, the AMA is coming out and saying, we have a crisis, and the crisis is in two forms if you read that article. It is, firstly, you can't get into emergency, the emergency department at the moment, and we have all these bed blockers. That's the actual word that is being used by the AMA, and they're referring to old people that they can't get out of hospitals into aged care or into their own homes. Last week I drove past RPA up here in Camperdown. There was actually ambulances double parked out in the street at 11 a.m. trying to get into the emergency department. So there have been 30 ambulances with people in the ambulances trying to get to the emergency department. So if we look at retirement villages, what has this got to do with you? This is from the RLC PwC survey. 44% of people who leave a retirement village go into residential aged care, and another 30% either die in their bed or go to hospital. Now, what if those aged care beds aren't there? What is going to happen to those people? And by 2025, there's definitely not going to be any aged care beds, and there's not going to be any aged care beds for another 7 years. And there are 25,000 people a year who leave a retirement village. So 40% of those are going to be looking for an aged care home as well, and that only accounts for 10% of the population. The other 90% are going to be looking for them as well. So we have a choice as a group of people in this room, we're going to let this happen on our watch, and if we do, we're going to go the same way as New Zealand. And in New Zealand, the sector watched exactly this train wreck happening in terms of the hospitals and aged care beds, and they're at a crisis stage. Now, some of you may have seen this TV commercial, but this TV commercial went to air mid-last year in New Zealand, along with 24-sheet posters at the airport, radio, and what have you. But watch this TV commercial from New Zealand.
New Zealand. We're in the midst of an aged care crisis. And if we don't address it now, by 2030 there will be thousands of older people without beds. Meaning thousands of parents will parent their parents too. The aged care crisis will affect us all.
Very confronting. So this is running on primetime TV, etc., etc. So it is real that we can be in the situation where we won't have aged care beds. And in New Zealand, the people who can't get into an aged care bed because they just aren't any available are the people that can't afford to get into a retirement village. And John Collins tomorrow is going to talk about what is happening with retirement villages in New Zealand who have been building the aged care beds. They have all decided that they're no longer going to be building aged care beds. They're going to build care suites instead and reduce the number that they're building per village by about 70%, going from 120 to 30 aged care beds in new retirement villages. Now, again, to demonstrate this is real and it's real today for everybody in this room, I met with this young lady up at Odyssey in Queensland late last year, and we've edited a bit of the conversation I had with her. And this is what she has to say.
I'm not a huge fan of the RAC model. I have been in aged care for approximately 18 years, and I feel that they're so tightly bound and reliant on funding that a lot of people are discriminated against because they're perhaps not worth enough funding to qualify for a spot in residential aged care.
So what can you do about it?
I think they just need to review how the funding model works. I feel that people, especially people of lower means that are low to moderate care, they're completely eliminated in the aged care space. There's nowhere for them to go because no one wants a person that doesn't have the ability to pay a RAD that's also going to generate low funding for them. The residential aged care facilities just don't really see a value in that. And as much as I'm sure that the intake people feel a level of empathy towards people that are in that situation, their hands are tied. Over the years, the amount of people I've seen fall through the cracks with nowhere to go but they need care is concerning. I was an aged care nurse and then moved into the advisory kind of role. So being an intake person with two very large residential aged care providers, and that probably covered maybe 6 or 7 years worth of my career working for those.
So that means there are a lot of customers out there that are not being serviced by the sector.
There are a lot of customers not being serviced by the sector because they can't find a spot that is willing to accept them, mainly due to low funding levels. I'm still finding issues now, and it's 2023, so...
I finished it on that point, and she said, and it's 2023. The point is, and I can say that this unequivocally, CFOs are placing the requirement on the induction people that to look at what the worth of the customer coming in is, understandably if they're going broke, but that means that people without means in this country increasingly are not going to have the aged care support from people in this room if we let that happen. So it comes down to responsibility, leadership, and the department. And we'd all say we're doing our best, but the department, they're difficult. So my question for the group is, are we going to be like New Zealand and allow this future train wreck to happen? Are we going to rely on market forces, i.e. the money, to make out decisions and our strategy, or do we want to be a nation and take a national and a welfare approach? I believe that we need to take this nation and welfare approach. If we're going to do that, first of all, we have to have trust with the department. And we have to help the department make good policy. Would everybody agree with that? Because it's the department that is driving us. So, I'd like to give a couple of examples of where the department needs us, but they need to trust us to understand these things. First of all, another question from the Senate estimates, which was, how many nurses are there short of the system? This is asked by Senator Ruston, and the department came back and said, I'm reading these figures from afar, 5,918, where it's 5,918 short for the 24-25 year. Now, the department's telling them that, but what is the department also doing? We're 21% down on the number of nurses that we need. We're 21% below. But the department has also said that in October, we're going to increase the number of minutes that you've got to deliver. There is a total disconnect from reality by the department. Now, they're sensible people. The reason why they're doing this is because we don't have the level of trust with the department. We've burnt our bridges when we gamed the system with ACFI, and we need to rebuild that trust. To demonstrate how far out of line they are with their policy, and I'm not saying this to admonish them, but they're an island unto themselves and we've got to break that thing. This is, again, a chart of the extra manpower the department is telling the minister is going to be required for the next 10 years. And in the bottom line there, I think I've got it from what I can see, I've got for home care and residential aged care, how many personal care workers we require. And so the department is saying in residential aged care, we only need 1,800 new personal care workers a year to add to the system. And in home care, which is going to be the big hope, we only need about 3,000 new personal care workers a year. Is this a joke? But this is what we're dealing with. Then if we look at the catch-22 that occurred with the new Aged Care Act that is being put out, we all celebrated when we saw that retirement villages for the first time were being recognised in the Act and saying, well, perhaps there's an opportunity that retirement villages will be able to provide a better service. And so in the Act it said an aged care home means that, and this is where the retirement villages were included, a place within a retirement village that has been converted to a place that's described in subset 2, and subset 2 is an aged care facility. The department's saying you can have provide a service in a retirement village, but if you do, you've got to act like a residential aged care and take on all those obligations, which defeats the strategy that is being implemented by half the people in this room as we speak. So we have a hypothesis. This is a DCM hypothesis. So we're saying the beds are full and you can't get one when you want it and how you want it. The baby boomers will not want to move into residential aged care anyway, especially if they now have to pay for it. What they're going to do is they're going to grab a retirement village home. If I'm paying for it, I'll go into a retirement village. It's built to support ageing, and this is what happened in New Zealand. And I'll get home care, and we now know that level 5 home care packages are coming in, and I'll refuse to leave the village. And if that's the case, if they say, I refuse to leave the village and you can't make me because I've got a level 5 home care package, we believe it makes sense, if there are no aged care beds, that those retirement village beds will become quasi-aged care beds. So we won't build them, they'll just become retirement village beds converted. Is that what we want? Is that what the sector wants? And to demonstrate that it is very difficult to move a resident from a retirement village, we at the DCM Institute do professional development days, and the leading law firms across the country come and present every PD day. So Tammy Berghofer from Minters, we had a long session, and the village managers, it is the session they are most interested in every PD day is the legal session. And we worked through with the village managers, how do you exit a person from the village if they don't want to go? And the answer was, you can't in today's world. Now, we have a problem. If everybody's ageing in a retirement village, what's going to happen to those people? The way we're structured at the moment, it's independent living. That's how we're structured. And this is a problem that...
Judy, could you explain the
Judy's going to
problem
answer
you've
for us.
identified as the president of the ARQRV?
Certainly, Chris. So one of the issues that has been brought to ARQ by a number of residents is the fact that they feel that they are becoming carers for other residents in the village who really are not able to live independently, and then there's no one else. They've got no families that care for them on a 24/7 basis. Certainly, not overnight, but residents are having to check up, which is really nice, on their neighbours, and they're quite happy to do that. But then when it becomes an everyday thing, then it becomes a chore and they're getting very resentful about it. I can give you an example of that. A very good friend of mine in this village looks after her neighbour. The other day she went in, there was nothing in the fridge, no food in the fridge. He'd taken 4 days worth of pills from his Webster pack because he got confused. His plants weren't watered. He'd sacked the girls who clean his house. And she said, it's impossible. I cannot become this full-time carer for him. And this is, a story I'm hearing more and more often, that other residents are becoming RISPA operators to go home at 4 o'clock in the afternoons and not be here at weekends. But even when they are, most village managers are not providing a care service. And Chris, I was just actually helping in the kitchen this morning. We've got a big function this evening. And the conversation turned to this because we were talking about people who have been in the village for a very long time, who really should no longer be living or trying to live independently, but are absolutely determined that they are not leaving because they're not going into aged care. And we can identify, just sitting there over coffee this morning before I came to this interview with you, people were talking about, they can identify 6 people who have been in the village for a very long time and who are no longer really coping. And we were, discussing what sort of quality of life they have, because they are so needy in getting their day-to-day chores left, but are still refusing not to go. And I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, one person today got very angry and said, they should just be told to leave, just tell them to go. I said, well, it's really not as easy as that, you can't. And I think that's another whole issue that needs to be addressed. How do you suggest that people need to find higher levels of support than they can get in a retirement village? Because often families don't want to know it.
So that last comment, so often the family don't want to know either. So what I'm saying is going to be the case in 5 years' time is already occurring. Now, Judy, who I think is here today, she lives in a Palm Lake Resort retirement village at Beachmere, and across the road from her is a Palm Lake residential aged care facility. And so she does have an aged care facility which is brand new directly across the road. And her husband has just moved into that facility. So those people who refuse to leave to even go across the road, they have the opportunity there, but they're not taking it up. And that's the challenge we're going to have. And it's also, for the purpose of the room, Palm Lake Resorts is perhaps our oldest large-scale land lease developer, and they now have 7 aged care homes, because even with the land lease communities, they identify that they've got to do that for their residents. So again, responsibility and leadership, they took the jump to go into residential aged care because they saw the need. Now, if we also look at villages today, the average age of people in a retirement village is 81, average age of death is 83, so you can see we're pretty close to being an aged care facility already. And we also look at the journey. What many people don't discuss is that most people who join a village are a couple. But after the first 5 years, the husband passes away, and that husband is often could have been or should have gone into residential aged care, but his wife is the carer. So we're already in that environment. And if we look at the supply line of aged care homes coming forward, retirement villages coming forward, we're also missing out there. So this was a chart that was done in 2020 by the RLC members, saying where they had to predict what their forward development was going to be and when they're going to hit the ground. So you can see that in FY24 in New South Wales, they thought there was going to be 2,789 homes to hit the ground. So 4 years out, you think they would know, wouldn't you? I reckon there's maybe 1,000 that have hit the ground in 2024 in New South Wales. So we're missing the targets day in, day out. So the retirement village homes aren't going to be there as well, when we need 5,500 units a year if we're going to maintain our 12% penetration, all people 75 plus. Just recapping the obvious, home care is not going to do it. Level 4 home hair care package, 7 hours a week, that's not going to do it. So the net result is we are big on an ageing people with increasing acuity, but we are short on property, accommodation and workforce. So what is the solution? And the solution has to be technology. So under the Deloitte study for hospitals, they came up with this chart. They said the average health worker in 2021 does 6 units of activity in a day. In 2050, that one worker, because of the supply of workers, hospital beds and so on, is going to have to be doing 25 units of work, i.e. they're going to have to be doing 5 times as much. The only way that they can achieve that, according to Deloitte and that study, is through 2 things. The first is technology, and the second is inculcating wellness into the ageing population. So they have this chart, which I don't expect you to run through, but they're going from left to right. They're saying illness, trying to address the illness, wellness. And they said that that is a 10-year journey. That's what they predicted. And we say, we haven't got 10 years. We've only got about 3 years, because the department, who recognises this problem, is starting to introduce a technology platform that they're going to expect to be working in home care in 3 years' time. I hope it's move over here to read. So this is Nick Morgan. He did a webinar about 3 weeks ago. Caroline in our office here recorded it, and this is part of his clip. He said, so certainly the role of the care partner or care manager in 2027 onwards is going to be critical, and the ability of the care partner to access information from care workers across multiple organisations to get real-time information that they are getting to need to be able to do their job is one of the challenges. So they're recognising that there are going to be many people servicing a person in their home. It's not just going to be somebody showering them, but it's going to be allied health, it's going to be doctors, and so on. And all that data has to be fed into a system, not only to maintain the care plan, but also to just make that person safe. And he said, we have to have all that done by July 27. Well, funnily enough, that's 3 years away. It's not 10 years away. So we're going to have the technology in place to do that. He also went on to say, and included in that will be high-level classifications. So if you like the equivalent of a home care package, level 5. Now, level 5 is intended to be just off residential aged care, and we understand the funding is going to be about $80,000 a year. And they want to introduce that on July 25. So that's 14 months away. There are people who are going to have level 5 packages in their home. Are we in a position to satisfy that? The answer is no. And that's what we're looking to do, and that's a big change. Well, that's a mouthful. Now, let's also look at the expenditure by GDP of aged care. And as you can see here, we are the second largest expenditure as part of GDP behind health. So to control that expenditure, again, is going to require technology. So what do we need? If I'm going to wrap up my presentation, what do we need? We need responsibility and leadership by the people in this room to recognise that we're not just going to let this happen on our watch. We need a dedicated minister. The minister who's going to speak next. She's Minister for Ageing and she's Minister for Sport. There's a thing called the Olympics coming along. Do you think she's not busy with that? Does anybody remember Minister Colbeck going to the cricket at Christmas because he was the Minister for Sport and the media got heavy on him because there were people with COVID in aged care homes? It's impossible to be both. We need trust and a partnership. Trust with the department, and we need a partnership with the department. And we need consolidation. We cannot escape from this. We need 100 operators in each of home care and residential aged care, just to invest in the tech, just to invest in the staff, just to invest in standardisation, just to invest in efficiency, and to have the funds to build all those homes. So tomorrow, please take particular attention to Prue Bowden's presentation, because those things is what Australian Unity started off in 4 years ago in the home care sector, and they're so far ahead as a result of it. But they themselves say they are only looking after the 235,000 clients that Australian Unity has. The rest of us have got to figure out what we're doing. So, being a little inflammatory, I believe that there are 5 people in Canberra who do have the trust of the department, and I'd like to point them out. I've talked about Grant Corduroy, Rachel Argaman, the head of Opal. They trust Rachel. Why? Because she's been in the job for 5 years. End of year 1, she went to them and said, these are all the things I have done, and these are the outcomes that I believe I can achieve. And at the end of year 2, she said, I've achieved all of those. And they said, you said you would, you did it, we trust you. Ian Yates, who's going to be speaking later, the hardest working person in this room. His new role that he has not only got the ear of the government has to listen to him in his new role. So listen very carefully when he explains what his role is. And sure, there's an element of policeman in it, but there's a large element of where is the innovation, how do we make things happen? And again, he's been the CEO of COTA for 25 odd years before this new role, before retiring and taking on this new role. I can tell you, they don't pay much at COTA. So he has been showing responsibility and leadership for 25 years. Tracy Burton, and from that cover, which I can't read from here, but if I remember correctly, it says we need courage. She talks sense. She comes from the private hospital system and the public hospital system. The department listens to her. And Tom has done a remarkable job, as I've outlined previously. So these are the people that we should look to, and others, of course, in the room, to work with the department and the government to develop trust. If we don't, we're going to end up like New Zealand, and we don't want that. We don't want that for senior Australians.